Hey guys, it's time of the season. It's time for Let's Go Live as well. How is everyone? Hi Carl. Okay, I think Colin Blunstone is here already. That is so awesome because that is our guest today, the legendary lead singer of the Zombies, the band behind this song. Colin Blunstone is going to be with us talking about his career, their legacy, their brand new announcement that they just announced 2 hours ago. It's major. Let's see if we can bring up Colin right now. Okay, that is the wrong. I'm not going for questions. I am going for... Okay, I'm going to send you an invite right now, Colin. So songs like this, Time of the Season, She's Not There, have helped shape pop culture and is still just as relevant to this day. I mean, countless artists from Eminem, Schoolboy Q, Miguel have sampled the Zombies music. And it's been used in so many movies, TV shows like The Crown, as well, Chelsea Football Club. Here he is, Colin Blunstone. You're frozen though, Colin. I think, okay, exploding. There he is. How are you, Colin?
I'm very well, Sharon. I'm very well.
Good. It's
great to talk to you.
Awesome to see you. I can't hear you very well, but maybe it's just getting situated.
Is it better if I get closer?
Yes, if you get closer, that sounds better. Can you guys hear? Can everyone hear? Colin, where are you live from right now?
It's Rod's house. We're actually recording at the moment in his studio, which is just out the back. And
Wow.
I've just popped out of the studio to talk to you tonight. We're in the middle of recording a new album for the Zombies.
We are so excited about that. That's coming out in 2022. I know. And this is history right here. It's your first time on Instagram Live. You're recording the next Zombies album as we speak.
Yeah.
It's great to see you. So you've come out of quarantine with a big major announcement. You announced it just a couple of hours ago. You're going back to Abbey Road Studios. Can you tell us everything?
Absolutely. We're going to be in Studio 2 in Abbey Road. It's the most iconic studio in the world. That's where the Beatles recorded all their tracks. And we'll be in Studio 2, exactly where they used to record. And can I just read this?
Of course, just read it from the press release.
Okay. We're doing a stream.
Read it straight from the press release.
we're doing a streamed concert from Abbey Road Studio 2. And it's going to be on September the 18th, 8 p.m. UK and 3 p.m. New York. It's the one and only.
Oh, I think you froze for a sec.
That's about it.
Okay, you're coming back. You froze for a sec, but yeah. So it's a world tour in one night that you're doing from Abbey Road Studio 2, like you said, is the most famous one. But you guys actually recorded from there as well. You recorded your iconic album, Odyssey and Oracle.
We certainly did from Abbey Road, but actually we were always in Studio 3.
Gotcha.
So we went into the studio about 2 days after they finished Sergeant Pepper.
Wow.
So they had been in Studio 2. We never met them. I really regret that. But when we went into the studio, there were lots of percussion instruments lying around on the floor.
Yeah.
That had been left by the Beatles, because although they usually recorded in Studio 2, they did go into Studio 3 too. So that was a real thrill for us.
Because you got to use one of the instruments as well. You used it throughout the entire album, and you didn't even ask, I heard.
That's right. John Lennon left his Mellotron, which kind of, it was an early way of recreating strings on a keyboard. Yeah. And we saw that and we used it. It's on everything on Odyssey and Oracle. The album would be completely different if John hadn't left that behind.
Well, thanks to John for that.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
And I know you and Rod Argent, you're going to be doing a Q&A after you do this live stream, which is going to be sort of like a world tour in one night. And you're going to have some celebrity friends who are going to be asking you questions as well. Do you know who those celeb friends are who we can look out for? Can you give us any juicy secrets?
Right at this moment, I can't give their names out right now.
Understood.
But, I'm really looking forward to it. I think it's going to be absolutely brilliant. I think we're going to be playing for about an hour and a half.
Wow.
and we'll be playing lots of hits and lots of tracks from Odyssey and Oracle. And of course, we'll be featuring tracks from this brand new album that isn't even finished yet. So I can't tell you what those tracks will be because we haven't recorded them.
Yeah, you don't even know yet. That's so incredible. So Colin, I have to ask you, are you ready for your 10 in 10 challenge? 10 random and revealing questions.
I'm as ready as I'll ever be. Yes.
You look ready. You look ready, Colin. Let's do it. Let's go for it. So the first one is complete these sentences, right? So the first one, if we weren't called the Zombies, we'd be called blank.
Well, we were called 2 names before the Zombies. So perhaps shall I divulge what those names were?
Sure. Yes, please do.
I have to tell you, they were desperate times. We just couldn't think of a name. It's harder than you think to come up with a name. So I'm embarrassed to say this, but for about 2 weeks, we were the Mustangs.
Oh, the Mustangs, really? That has a whole different feel to it. Very car-like.
Yeah. And I'm afraid it got worse after that.
Oh, no.
I think I was responsible for this. We were the Sundowners, there was a film called Sundowners, but that didn't last very long. And then our original bass player called Paul Arnold came up with the idea of the Zombies. And I've got to tell you, I had no idea what a zombie was.
Oh, you didn't know what a zombie was at that point?
No, I didn't know what a zombie was. I'm not sure what a zombie is now, to be honest. But anyway, it stuck, and that's how it came about. I always think the name The Zombies came out of desperation because we just couldn't think of anything else. And at the time, of course, there was no zombie culture. There weren't zombie films or zombie magazines, zombie TV programs. It was a very, original idea.
It was edgy.
Very edgy. So I like to think that we're partly responsible for the whole zombie culture.
I think you are. I think you are. Okay, so the second part of this is, before every performance, I must blank. Before every performance, I must blank. What's that blank?
I must warm up my voice.
Okay, how do you do that?
So I have singing exercises, and I'll do a sort of half an hour, 35 minutes before sound check. And then I do the same thing before a show. So it intrigues me in a way that before we do a show, I've been singing for an hour. But it really helps. It makes your voice stronger, and hopefully it makes it more accurate. And it means that when you hit the stage, that first song, that first note, it should be bang on, right in the middle, Because I know a lot of singers who say, yeah, after the 5th song, I warmed my voice up. Everything was great. And I always think, well, why not warm your voice up before the show starts? And then hopefully you'll be there from the very first note. I hope so. I always try to do that. I'm tempting Providence here now, aren't I? I'll probably, my first songs from now on, I'll be a little bit under the note. But that's what I'm trying for. So I will always spend a lot of time warming up my voice.
Yeah, I've seen you perform a couple of times, and you are always right there from the first song, from the first note. Bam! Now I know why. Okay, so then the last part of that question: the Zombies are the absolute best at blank.
Well, I've often thought that if you really narrow down the Zombies, we are a 60s band that are still writing our own material and constantly touring. So we must be one of the best, at least, of the 60s bands, still writing and recording our own material and still touring. Because, sometimes I try and write a list of who's left from the 60s that's still writing, recording and touring. And there's not many. So I would say we're one of the best of the 60s bands that's still touring.
And there are a lot of people who would say you are the best. So there you go.
Very kind of them.
Question number 2. So I'm going to name 3 of your song or album titles and ask you a question around each title. So not around the actual song or album, but around the title. Okay. So So Still Got Hunger, that's your last album that you guys put out in 2015, the last Zombies album, I believe. You've still got that hunger, as you were saying, like you are one of the only 60s bands, definitely one of the greatest 60s bands in general, but you're still out there, you're still doing your thing, you're still working, you're in the studio right now. Where does this hunger come from?
Well, I think that all of us, we love writing songs, we love recording, and we love touring. I mean, we're so fortunate at this time in our lives to still be able to get out there and do it. And we just love every minute of it. And I think it sums it up very well, Still Got That Hunger, because we really do have that hunger. You know, I mean, it's been quite tough for us. It's been tough for everyone, this pandemic. That's, of course, has crippled the whole world. But when you love touring and you love performing, you really do miss it. And we're starting to tour from February 2022, and I'm really looking forward to getting back out on the road. So for us, it's never been a financial arrangement with touring and recording. We play because we love to play. And you know, it's nice if there's a little financial remuneration at the end of it, but that's not our primary motivation for playing.
So it's basically that passion that you still have in the rest of the group, Rod, etc., still has. And that's a great thing, because oftentimes you'll have one member of a group who still has the passion, but then the others don't, but you guys are in it together.
I know that can happen, but, you know, we just G one another up. We just love playing. It's an absolute joy.
That's so awesome. Okay, so Hung Up on a Dream, that's from the Odyssey and Oracle album from 1968. Is there a dream that you've always been hung up on that you've either achieved or maybe you're still working on achieving?
Well, I think to have had a lifetime's career in the music business is one of my dreams, because when we started in this business, alongside many other people, I thought this would be a 2 or 3 year adventure. Wow. That's what I thought. And I'm sure most people did when they're in a band. If you have a little bit of success, you think, this is great. You know, this could last 2 or 3 years. Well, our first record was in 1964. So I can't even count how many years that is, but it's over 50 years that we've been fortunate enough to keep working, and that certainly was one of my dreams. And then more recently to be inducted into the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame. That is just incredible. That, you know, I still remember us as kids. You see, when we first met, I think we were about 15 years old, and we just played locally. And it's a very fragile existence when a band first gets together. It could have finished at any minute. But we managed to hold on to it and keep it together. And there we are in 2019 at the Barclays Center in Brooklyn, being inducted into the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame. That is the culmination of a dream. It certainly is.
So incredible. And down the street from here, because I live in Brooklyn, down the street from the Barclays Center. So really, and we'll talk more about that later on, the 10-10 challenge. So I Want You Back Again, one of your singles from the 1960s. If there is a moment, one moment in time that you could bring back to replay and experience it over again, what would that one moment be?
Well, I think possibly is that absolutely wonderful night at the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame. I mean, that would certainly be one of them. How about going to America for the first time when we were 19 years old and we arrived in New York and we had the #1 national record on Cashbox. Don't think it was #1 on Billboard. That was a wonderful experience as well. Remembering we're still very young boys arriving in the home of rock and roll. You see, sometimes I think Americans forget this, but most UK musicians always look to America because it's the home of the blues, it's the home of jazz, and it's the home of rock and roll. It's where we got all our ideas from. I've always felt a bit guilty about that, particularly in the 60s when we were performing rhythm and blues classics and the audiences was going mad. And I felt like I wanted to stop and say, you do realize we're playing your music to you. I know it's been through a kind of a filter over in the UK and it's coming back, but this is your music. And So to cut a long story short, it always was an ambition, and I think of most UK musicians, always an ambition to come and play in America. So I'd love to have that first day in the States again. That was a magical time.
And with all the screaming fans, all the screaming teenage girls as well that were there to welcome you, that must have been like surreal.
Well, it is absolutely fantastic. Yes, it takes a little bit of getting used to. I mean, you tend to look over your shoulder because you think there's someone behind you who's come on stage, you know, when it first happens. But it is wonderful when an audience is behind you. You know, it lifts you. It's a very special relationship between an artist and a really enthusiastic audience. It's like no other feeling. It really does lift you.
Amazing. Okay, now question number 3. This is a really big deal. Chelsea Football Club just put out their new promotional film for their home kit. This is a really big deal to you. So they used Time of the Season, and you are a massive, massive Chelsea fan. And is it true that your uncle actually once played for Chelsea? Was it your uncle, Frank?
He is a relative of mine.
Okay.
I've been trying to remember, because I met him when I was very young. I went to a game when I was 10 with my father and my grandfather, and we spent some time with Frank. He's always lived in the north of the country, and I live in the south, so I only met him once. As I remember, my father is Frank Blunstone's father's cousin, which kind of makes me a second cousin or a cousin once removed. But for a 10-year-old boy, that was a very exciting time. And I met some of the players after the game. And I've always been an ardent Chelsea fan since then. And they're having a very good season at the moment. They just had a little bit of a hiccup. One of the big games they lost on Saturday. But there are some other things that they're still involved in that they're doing very well. So, yeah, I will always be a Chelsea supporter. And I was very fortunate, and they sent me in a lovely presentation box. They sent me a Chelsea shirt. Oh, I was very proud.
One of the new ones
yes. And of course, immediately I had to try it on, and I was very pleased to do that. It's very kind of them to send it.
Yeah. What did you think of the film? I thought it was so cool because they take the 60s classic version of Time of the Season and then they kind of remix it. And one of the star players, I don't know a lot about football, but it's Callum Hudson-Odoi, I think, who's behind the decks. And the beat just hits really hard with this kind of remix version of it. What did you make of that?
I think the remix is absolutely fantastic. And at the moment, I think they're working on doing a 3-minute remix. So, I mean, I'm kind of hoping that it might actually be issued as a record.
Yes.
Because I think it sounds really, really good.
It does.
It's a thrill for me to see some of the players actually sort of doing their shapes and their moves to our tune. You know, I know obviously it's been enhanced and sort of modernized a bit, but the basic track is what the Zombies played.
Fiona Bloom, who helped facilitate and make this interview happen, she sent me the film, and I was like, wow. I said, this is incredible, like this is so good. So I hope they do release it as a single.
It would be fantastic, wouldn't it? And the thing is that their online presence at Chelsea, it goes all around the world, and it goes to roughly 120 million people. So it means 120 million people will hear Time of the Season, and it means we'll be reaching a lot of people that, you know, football fans who might possibly not know the Zombies. So it's a great great exposure for us.
Totally. And something else that's great exposure, leading me to question number 4. So many artists who have remixed and sampled your songs, from Eminem to Miguel, Santana, and more. Do you have any faves there? Do you keep track of all the tracks that come out? Because there's so many. Your music gets sampled all the time. Do you keep track of that?
Not perhaps as much as I should do, because also it's in a lot of films. I think we've been really
so many.
Our songs are in so many films, and when these people kindly, you know, use our tracks and remix them, and when it goes into films, it's like having a hit record all over again. You know, you reach out to a new market, and it's really, really helped the Zombies you know, as we try to reestablish ourselves, because Rod and I got together again for 6 dates in 1999. Although we'd worked together in records and we'd always been mates, we hadn't actually toured for some time. And we got together in 1999. And of course, we had to start from the bottom. We had to start from the beginning. You know, we were playing in little rooms at the back of pubs, sometimes to not very many people. But things like the songs being in films and people doing remixes of the songs really helped us. And of course, the other thing is that we played constantly. We kept banging on the door, and then gradually we played to bigger places and bigger places. And now when we tour, we're back to where we were in the 60s in terms of the audiences that we're playing.
It's amazing. I know She's Not There was also in season 3 of The Crown, which is such a smash hit show. Did you binge watch The Crown during quarantine? Are you a binge watcher? What do you watch to unwind? Do you unwind or always working?
No, I'm working quite a lot, but I have watched The Crown. I thought it started off really good, but I wasn't so sure about the later episodes of it. It's wasn't quite so convincing, I don't think, but it was nice to see She's Not There in there. That was an eye-opener. I mean, that was great. Really, really good.
It was so good, so good. Okay, so question number 5, Odyssey and Oracle. It was released in 1968, but back then it wasn't actually a commercial success. Nowadays, people are calling this one of the, including Rolling Stone, one of the greatest albums ever created. So when it finally started to get the recognition it deserved, did that change your opinion and the way you view the album? How did you view the album when it didn't do so well initially, and then once through this slow build, it became so iconic? Did it change your mind and your feelings? Yeah.
I can remember precisely how I felt about Odyssey and Oracle at the time. I felt that it was the best we could do. I was really pleased with it. I'm not very good at judging whether something's commercial or not, but I thought that was the best we could do. And at that time, the market was still dominated by singles rather than albums. It was about to change. At the end of the 60s and early 70s, suddenly the record industry was all about albums. But we released a single before we released the album. It was Care of Cell 44. We released that in the UK, and it wasn't a hit. And I think all of us were so disappointed. We just felt maybe it's time to move on and do other things. So although I did think Odyssey and Oracle was really good, it seemed as though the market was telling us it was time to move on, because it just wasn't a commercial success. It was hardly noticed when it was released. And even sort of a couple of years later, when Time of the Season was a hit, it was #1 in Cashbox. Odyssey and Oracle still wasn't really a hit. It got into Billboard Top 100 for a couple of weeks, I think. It wasn't really a commercial success. And then I just don't know what happened. It's a mystery. Over a period of years, I honestly don't know.
You have no idea how it suddenly became the greatest.
No, I don't know. How can people not recognize it when it came out? And it's the same album, nothing's changed. And yet, as you rightly said, Rolling Stone has named it as one of the best 100 albums of all time. It's a mystery. I just don't understand it. But I mean, it is great to get recognition at any time. It would have been nice to have got the recognition when it first came out. It didn't happen. But in some ways, it's even more exciting when you think it's gone and forgotten. And suddenly people are talking about the album as an all-time classic. It's sort of doubly exciting, really. Slightly mystifying, but I'm not too worried about that. I'll take it. It's great.
Does it change the way that you view success? Because oftentimes people think of success as something immediate, right? I put this out, I get that immediate response or feedback or the reward. But the slow build has really worked for you guys. And would you say a slower build leads to greater longevity, ultimately?
Well, I think it can do. You know what I would say in the music business, there are no rules.
Yeah.
I'm always intrigued. Not very often now, but there have been times when I've been in a record executive's office and they're kindly telling me what I should be doing and how the record industry works. And I don't think anybody knows, not really. And so I don't think there are any rules, but possibly, yeah, a slow build is an advantage. But the most, the most important thing I think is to get out there and play live. I know it's important to make good records. I know it's important to write great songs, really important to write great songs. But you've got to get out there and play live if you want to have a career that's going to have any length to it. If it's going to, you're talking about a lifetime's career, you have to be a live performing artist, and you've just got to get out there. And it's tough because more than anything, it's the traveling. Hours on the road. The playing is great. Everybody enjoys that bit. But the traveling can wear you down. But it's so important, and probably more important now than it's ever been, that you get out there and you just play. You've got to.
Really good advice. Really, really great advice. So we talked a little bit about this, but question number 6, the Zombies finally getting the credit you guys have deserved for so long. The Rock and Roll Hall of Fame, you're inducted in 2019, and you say that was one of the greatest nights of your life. Can you tell us about, were there any sort of behind the scenes moments or on stage moments that you can tell us about? I know Janet Jackson was also inducted that year as well, and Radiohead, I believe. Did you get to mix and mingle with some of the other inductees that night?
Not an awful lot on the night, but we did, because we played the last song with Def Leppard, and also Brian May. Brian May gave the induction speech for Def Leppard, but what a lovely person, such a nice guy. And so I talked a lot to Brian and to Def Leppard. They were the people I spoke to most, along with Susanna Hoff from the Bangles, who gave the induction speech for us, who is just fantastic and gave a great speech. It's not easy because there's 17,000 people at the induction, and so
wow.
to walk out there and to give such an intelligent and interesting speech, and it was very moving as well. And I thought Susanna just did so well. I'm a huge fan. So yeah, I did meet some of the bands, but not all of them. It quite intrigues me because it looks like we should all be backstage having a party, but I'm kind of serious with what we're doing, and you have to prepare yourself. So some of those bands I didn't meet at all. I met The Cure, but that was the night before.
Gosh.
So they were all great because I was in the audience, except for when we played. I watched everyone, and they were all magnificent, really, really good.
With 17,000 people there, do you ever, I mean, you've been doing this for a long time, but do you still get nerves before you get out there?
Well, I think all performers get a little bit of a buzz before you go on there. You can call whatever word you want to use it. You can say nerves if you want to, but they're nerves that you can control and use. You have to learn how to do that. So yeah, I think if you don't get a bit of a tingle before you go on stage, there's something a bit wrong, but as long as it's under control.
Sorry about the sirens, by the way. New York City living for you. There are a lot of those going on. So now that you are a Rock and Roll Hall of Famer, has your rider become more extensive? Are you expecting better snacks in the green room when you go perform?
Well, I will have to think about that. I don't think we're too demanding, to be honest, in the green room. And I've probably, as we've got older, fewer and fewer people drink alcohol. Yeah, I've noticed that with other bands as well, and I think it's probably an age thing because when you're young, every night's a party night when you're playing. But as you get older, so we're not particularly demanding in the alcohol department. And me personally, I don't eat before a show. I can't. When you're singing, you're using your rib cage all the time, and if you've just had a big meal, it's really painful. I've done it once or twice. I do not. So I think I'm every promoter's answer to prayer, really, because I don't drink and I don't eat. So I just like it if there's a room that's warm and safe where I can leave my old jeans while I'm on stage and they won't get stolen. And that's all I'm asking for.
Maybe a glass of water if you're being picky.
Yes, a glass of water would be nice, yes.
Great, thank you. Okay, so question number 7. Another legendary British band from the 60s. Of course, you mentioned them earlier. The Beatles, of course. You guys both recorded at Abbey Road Studios. There's quite the connection between you guys. You used the mellotron. And then I also heard, and tell me if this is true or not, well, I read it online, that John Lennon actually approached you guys to manage you. Is that true?
The story that I heard, that John Lennon was interested in producing us in the studio. But I have to say, I never met John. Well, I said hello to him, but it was just backstage. I don't think he would have known who I was probably, but I've never spoken to John Lennon. So I've been told, yes, that he wanted to produce us. It would have been fantastic, you know, but sadly it didn't happen.
And I heard somebody said no. Maybe we don't know who said no.
What, in our band?
Yeah, that's what it said online, that you guys said no.
Oh, I think that's very likely. If John Lennon or any of the Beatles had asked to produce us, I think we would have been very, very interested in certainly having a conversation about it.
Yeah. You guys, when you made it to the top of the charts in the US, it was She's Not There. And you were only the second British group to do so, because it was the Beatles initially. Would you say that the Zombies have been influenced by the Beatles and vice versa?
I should perhaps just say, I think we were the second band to have a #1 record, UK band to have a #1 record with a self-penned song. So, you know, we wrote that song. I think Dave Clark might have nipped in there between the Beatles and us. I've forgotten your question.
Oh, no, that's okay.
Oh, have we been influenced by them? We were incredibly influenced by them. I don't know if they're wherever. I don't think they were probably influenced by us, but we were. It was one of the problems that we had, because when She's Not There was a hit, a few weeks before, we had been playing locally to just small little clubs and so forth, and we would have been playing Beatles covers. But when we have a hit record, we can't play Beatles covers. We have to play our own material. And Rod Argent, who wrote She's Not There, and Chris White, who wrote the B-side, they'd only just started writing. So there was this kind of gap where we didn't have that much material when She's Not There was a hit. It was a bit of a problem. Once they'd established themselves as songwriters, that kind of culminated in Odyssey and Oracle, really. They wrote the whole album. And I just think they became such accomplished songwriters over that period. They were still, you know, about 20 years old, 21 years old when they wrote that album. And it started with She's Not There and the B-side, which Chris wrote, You Make Me Feel Good. Mm-hmm. And then they learnt their trade and ended with Odyssey and Oracle. Yes, we were very influenced by the Beatles, incredibly influenced by them. I wouldn't think it would work the other way, but I'd love it if they were influenced by us a bit. It would be fantastic.
Especially if John Lennon did want to produce you guys. He obviously liked what he was hearing.
Yeah, he may have known more about us than I realized.
Yeah, definitely. Now, you mentioned this a little bit as well, traveling to the US that first time. This is question number 8. And it was to promote She's Not There. And, you know, screaming fans, everyone's going crazy for you. I can only imagine what some of those fan experiences and interactions must have been like back then, especially as you said, you know, you were on the stage and you're always sort of nervous as someone getting on the stage behind me. What's the wildest sort of fan story that you have from those days? And then, of course, you still have a tremendous amount of fans. Do you still have some, you know, some interesting stories, maybe a little different these days?
Well, I mean, it is a lot more relaxed now, but for instance, when we came over, we played the Murray the K's Christmas show at the Brooklyn Fox. And I don't think the Brooklyn Fox exists anymore, but we would get there first thing in the morning, and we would, I think we got taxis there because there were already people around, so we would nip in very early. One thing that always intrigued me was we went home on the subway because everyone had gone home. So we went home on the Brooklyn subway, which everyone said at that time in '64 was quite sort of rough and tough, but that's what we did.
Yeah, I think it is again, to be honest. But sorry, go ahead.
Well, when we played the Murray the K's show at the Brooklyn Fox, we couldn't leave the building. It was completely surrounded, and we had to stay in the whole time. One person, Paul Atkinson, was our lead guitarist. He went out of the stage door. He thought, I've got to get out, you know. And he got backed up against a plate glass window, and they were tearing his clothes off him. And the police went in and got him out. And they said, listen, we'll do this once, but we're not doing it again. And so Paul came back in through the stage door with his shirt all ripped to shreds. And that was it. We were locked away for 10 days. But in some ways it was great because we were there for 10 days over Christmas. We opened on Christmas Day, and it meant that everyone was away from home over Christmas, including all the American acts. And so there was a great camaraderie backstage, and I think it was a great introduction for us to America and to the music industry in America, which is perhaps slightly different to what it is over here. Yeah. And it was a wonderful time for us. Really, really great.
Who were some of the acts that you bonded with on that trip?
Patti LaBelle and the Bluebells.
Wow.
You know, she had that band with her at the time, a singing group with her at the time, and they were wonderful. I think they were a little bit more experienced than us, and so they kind of took us under their wing, and they were incredible. But we had to follow them every night. They brought the house down, absolutely brought the house down. And then these 5 teenage boys from St. Albans and Hatford, never been to America before, had to go on stage and follow them. And, you know, I'm glad to say that we did okay, but that must be one of the toughest things to do at that time, to follow them. Anyway, the Shangri-Las, Benny King, the Shirelles, I think the Nashville Teens were on there, Chuck Jackson, the ones that come to mind immediately. It was a great show, really, really good.
Incredible.
Dionne Warwick.
Oh, okay. All the legends. You mentioned being from Hatfield and St. Albans. I'm from Watford, by the way, so just down the street.
Are you really?
Yeah.
Oh, I presume you're American. Oh, really?
Oh, no. I'm from Watford. So, and then I moved here for university and then ended up staying. Now my cat wants his 5 minutes of fame, though, Chewy. So yeah, I've lived here for a long time now. So I do have a bit of an American twang, but I'm actually English. So
well, it's
there you
funny
go.
Because when you first started talking, I thought you sounded American, but now you sound more English. So
yeah.
You speak to English people, probably your English accent comes through.
Exactly. It comes out stronger. People get confused. Sometimes people think I'm Australian now. But okay, great stuff. So question number 9, we're almost there. So you're working on this new Zombies album for 2022. You don't have all the songs yet, but do you have the name for the album?
Unfortunately, we don't. It is something that we normally do at the end of the process, you know, when the album's finished. That's when we'll be looking for a name for the album. I mean, in a way, it's been prolonged because of this pandemic. We actually started this probably about 9 or 10 months ago, but we wanted to have the whole band in the studio at the same time and get that energy from playing together. A lot of records now, people go in the studio one at a time. In fact, often they'll do it in their studio and just send it in to the main studio so that you don't meet. But we wanted to do it in a completely different way, and we wanted everyone to be in the studio at the same time and to record it pretty much live. But we weren't able to do that because there's so many travel restrictions. In particular, our bass player Soren is actually Danish, so he's not even in the UK, so it slowed things down. But we have say 5 tracks quite close to being finished now, although it has been a bit stop-start. It really has. So I'm hoping that as the restrictions are lessened, that we can all get together in the studio here and we could probably finish it quite quickly.
Amazing. And I know the end of this year you're also going to be celebrating the 50th anniversary of your solo debut as well. 1 year.
I am. Yeah.
On November, is it November 21st? You're celebrating the 50th anniversary?
I'm not sure if it's that's the actual date. You've caught me out a bit. I'm in zombie mode. My first solo album came out in, is that what you're talking about?
Yeah, the first solo album, 1 year.
1 year, and it was produced by Rod Argent and Chris White from the Zombies, and it came out in November 1971. And eventually there was a big hit over here. It wasn't a hit in America, but a big hit called Say You Don't Mind, which was, the song was written by Denny Lane, who's a great songwriter. And it features a 21-piece string orchestra. There's not a rock and roll song as such. It's really unusual. It was a big hit in the UK. And there's been a lot of interest in the 50th anniversary of that album. So I'm thrilled it's going to be re-released. I never thought that would happen, but I'm really excited about it.
So awesome. So, you know, having this career that spans 5 decades and still making music, what would you say are the pros and cons of making music when you first came out back in the 60s to today's music industry, which is just completely, it's like night and day, really, isn't it?
It's so different. I mean, I'm not really on top of what happens now. It's I don't really understand, and I don't particularly want to understand. I just want to understand what we're doing. I do worry a little bit that there are not the venues that, you know, the clubs for young bands starting out. They need places to go and play, and we were really fortunate in the 60s that there were many clubs. Every town had so many clubs where young bands could go and play and make their mistakes, because, you know, everybody has to go through a period where they're learning their craft. And that does worry me a little bit, that there just aren't those places for people to go and play. I mean, I think now people will just try and get a deal with a record company or else get some kind of online presence. It's just a whole different way of doing it. And I'm not very up on computers and online presence. I just don't understand it too much.
It can be quite fleeting, fame nowadays as a singer. You put out that one song that might be big, and then we're always like, well, whatever happened to so-and-so?
I think it always was that way, but it's probably more that way now. But that's why, just to go back to what I said earlier on, it's so important to get out there and play and build a fan base. You know, it's the old-fashioned way of doing it, but I think that's what gives you a career, if you've got a solid fan base, and you can only get that by going out and playing. You can't rely on keep having hit records. The amount of people that have hit records over a period of years, they're minuscule. There's so few, and they're usually very special artists. So you're going to have peaks and troughs in your career. If you're coming into the business, you have to know that. You know, hopefully you'll start off with a bang, but at some point those troughs are going to come. You've got to find a way to get through it. And one way is to just keep playing. Just keep playing.
Do you think there needs to be a movement to bring back some of these iconic live venues? Because so many of them have closed, haven't they? And then struggled through COVID.
Well, I would hope that it can happen, maybe over a period of time, because I think there is an audience there. And the audience needs the venues. You know, I'm not quite sure, because COVID, you know, isn't over yet. I don't know how bad it's going to be when we get back out on the road, how many venues we will have lost. But I really hope that a lot of those venues will have survived. It's going to have been really tough for them, but I hope they have survived, and I hope new ones will be opening for the new bands that are coming along, and for the bands like us who are not quite so new.
Exactly. We all love live music. We can't get enough live music. Okay, so we're at question number 10. You've almost completed the 10 in 10 challenge. So question number 10. What would you say is the biggest life lesson you have personally learned going through this journey so far? What's the biggest life lesson that you have learned, and what advice can you give to all of us on what you've experienced?
Well, I mean, one thing about the business that I learned is that it can be a lifetime career. I didn't know that when I first started out with the Zombies. I thought it was going to be I'm sorry, I'm repeating myself a bit, but I thought it was going to be a 2-year, 3-year adventure wonderful adventure, playing the music I love with my pals, traveling around the world. It sounds pretty good, doesn't it? I mean, I thought that would be wonderful. If I was starting again, I would just try and bear in mind that this can be a career. If you work at it, this can be a lifetime's career. That would certainly be one thing about the business, and with regard to the business and life in general, I think you get out of life and you get out of the business roughly in proportion to what you put in. So you've got to put it in before you're going to have the chance of getting it back. And the music business is no different to any other business. You have to work at it, and I always think it's a stamina business. It's not a sprint. You might have a hit record, but believe me, the record company are going to be breathing down your neck for the follow-up, and you've got no material. What are you going to do? Then they'll put out some week-old thing song that you didn't want them to release, and suddenly your career's over. It can so easily happen. So it is important to work at it if you're in the music business. There's always things you can improve.
And you can't have too much pride, can you? Because you guys had a hit song, but then there are times where you've had to sort of start all over again and go to those smaller venues and then build your way up again.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, I don't mind things like that. I really don't. In fact, I like playing across the spectrum of venues. I like playing really intimate, small places. I mean, we play in New York. We play at the Cutting Room and City Wine.
I saw you there. Yes, that's where I saw you, I believe.
That's one of my favorite venues. I love those places. And then we play the Barclays Centre to 17,000 people. We do play arenas as well, and I enjoy going all the way through it, through the small theatres, big theatres, and then playing festivals. We've played Glastonbury, we played the Isle of Wight Festival, we've played the biggest festivals in the world. I enjoy all of that. So it's not for me personally, it's not a problem if things go a bit quiet. It's fine. What goes around comes around. You just got to roll your sleeves up and get cracking.
And my last question for you, this isn't part of the 10 and 10, just out of interest.
You've already had your 10.
I know I have. Oh no. I'm gonna squeeze this one in because I just want to know for myself, because your music it's helped shape pop culture. It's not just about a song. I mean, your songs I don't know anyone who hasn't heard Music by the Zombies. It's just everywhere, and it's shaped us, and it's still shaping us. So how does that feel to know just how extraordinary your music is and what an impact it's had on all of our lives?
Well, of course, it's a wonderful feeling. That's really why we write and record music, because we want it to get to the widest audience we possibly can. So to think that it has had an effect on people's lives, that's a reward that we're looking for. That's really why we do what we do. It's a wonderful feeling. And just going back to the previous question that you said, there's been times when things have been very quiet for our band. So after all this time, to now being, to be getting some kind of acknowledgement for what we've done, it's absolutely fantastic. And it's sweeter because we've had the downtimes. It's more intense now that we're having some success. It's, you can appreciate it much more because we've definitely had times that weren't so good as well.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, you guys are legends. You're a legend. Thank you so much. We'll be looking out. So the live stream is September 18th from Abbey Road Studios. Okay, and everyone can get tickets and be a part of that, and then watch your live Q&A with some celebrity guest friends who are going to be asking you questions as well. So that's going to be fun. I'll be there watching, and I can't wait to see you guys perform, see you guys back at it for one night only until you go on your tour next year.
Absolutely. It's been great talking to you. I've really enjoyed it. I'll be going to get back to the studio now and see if I can get some vocals down.
Definitely. The guys are probably like, where is he? Where is he? Thank you so much, Colin. Thank you guys all for watching Let's Go Live. And Colin, we'll be listening out for that new music. Can't wait.
Thanks, Sharon. All the very best. Okay.
Take care. Bye.
Okay. Bye.
Bye, everyone.
Bye.
Bye.